Super Wild Card Weekend started off with a bang. This is a great job by the NFL of adding an extra game on Saturday and Sunday. This is definitely something that I see sticking around for the foreseeable future. And the first game, let's get right into it. It was great. The Colts at the Bills. The 2-seeded Bills playing at home against the 7-seeded Colts, an 11-5 team. You know, a lot of these AFC teams, they're very good. And I knew that the Colts were no slouch, but in my predictions, the Bills were just playing very good football. And so the result of this game, to me, wasn't all that surprising. However, the Colts really had many opportunities to win this game. They really did. I mean, the Colts could have definitely won. And with that being said, Josh Allen played very well. He really did. He makes a lot of really good plays where it looks like he's got nothing, and then he scrambles and he finds someone, on the sideline. It's very impressive. And the Colts kind of went blow for blow with the Bills. And really what hurt them is at the end of the second half, they go for it up 10-7 instead of, kicking the field goal and going up 13-7. They don't get it, and the Bills go down the field and they score before the end of the half to take a 14-10 lead. And at that point, there had been a lot of close calls. There was a lot of very crucial reviews in this game. This was a very, I don't want to call it a slow game, but there were just a lot of close calls that deserved, booth reviews and challenges. And that was a big turning point in this game. And the Colts were able to pound the rock. The Bills' rush defense is suspect, and Jonathan Taylor was pretty much running down their throats for a good portion of that game. But Josh Allen, at almost every turn, was able to make big plays. And Phillip Rivers, I thought he had a pretty good game. He is an older quarterback, obviously not fleet of foot, never was. He's just a bit limited. There's certain situations where if they're, in a third and long type scenario, it's tough for him, but he still made big plays today. It was impressive. And you got to give him a ton of credit as well. A couple of big things. Rodrigo Blankenship missed a really critical field goal when they were down at the time 17-10. So, and that could have, it was a chippy. It was, 30 plus yards. Misses it. Meanwhile, Tyler Bass in a big spot drains a 50 plus and some, probably about 53, 54 to put them up at the time 27-16, which was a lead that they would hold. But the Colts showed a lot of fight. They showed a ton of fight, and they were able to, thanks to Jack Doyle, throwback, right? He's still in the league. He's one of the 3 Colts tight ends, gets a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to put him down by 3. A big moment in this game that I don't think was talked about was, and we saw this just a lot in general today, was really questionable challenges by coaches. Obvious reviews where clearly someone was down. In this case, Zach Moss, and on this play he actually got hurt, and it looks like he might be out for the rest of the postseason. We wish him well. Did look good, and that cost Frank Reich and the Colts a very valuable timeout, because at the end of the game, first off, there was a very big call where Phillip Rivers makes a very big 4th down conversion pass to Zach Pascal. And he makes the catch, and he gets up, and then he gets the ball stripped. It was a very, very close call. And I'm also noticing that unless it's so obvious, if there's not enough evidence, the call is going to stand. I've also seen that a lot too. And so if the original call on the field had been fumble and a Bill recovery, I think they would have kept it that way, but it wasn't. The catch stood and no, turnover in possession. So the Colts start fresh, but at that point, there's about maybe 30 seconds left. They're at about midfield, and they had no timeouts. So they were in a tough position where they needed to make plays that were out of bounds, and it just didn't work out. And to the point where on the last play, it would have been about a 65. It would have been a really long field goal, maybe like 65 or so, give or take. Blankenship had missed before. I'm not sure the exact wind in that direction, but I can tell you this. Going for a Hail Mary with Phillip Rivers, no offense to the guy, he has a noodle arm. He does. So that had no chance. I would have either brought in Jacoby Brissett to just throw it deep or maybe try for the really tough field goal. So the Colts came up just short. It was almost a situation where the Bills had another playoff failure, but they finally did it. They finally won a playoff game since 1995. First time. So that's big for that team. It is. And they showed some cracks. Josh Allen, on his last possession, was not quite able to put them over the hump. In fact, he had a very big fumble that was recovered. And last year, against the Texans, he had some boneheaded plays that cost his team, and it almost happened again. But luckily, it was they lost a ton of yards, but the Bills' offensive lineman was able to recover it. So this game had everything. This was definitely the best game of the day. And going into the day, I think that most would have predicted that, yeah, Bills-Colts, that's a good game. And it was. It lived up to it. And so the Bills move on. And it doesn't really change much in terms of the AFC picture because there's still 2 games tomorrow. So we'll get more into that as we move forward. But obviously a big win for the Bills. They will be hosting what I would predict likely to be Pittsburgh. I kind of tend to think that Pittsburgh will beat Cleveland. And again, and we're going to definitely get more into the fact that divisional games have a whole lot of meaning, but Cleveland's in a rough spot not having their head coach due to COVID and other players as well. They are kind of decimated. So whereas I felt like that game was one where I kind of gave a slight edge to Pittsburgh, it's a little bit more than it had been when we discussed this earlier in the week. So I think that you're likely looking at the Steelers at the Bills, but we got a little bit of time before that. So let's now go into the NFC. Seahawks, Rams. And I kind of felt like this could be close. I didn't really have a great feel for this one. And the Rams, their quarterback situation was very much in question. And I'm not really a big Jared Goff guy to begin with. And John Wolford, while definitely an unknown, he has some running ability. You can kind of there's some different looks you can give the Seahawks with that style offense. And the Seahawks seemed like maybe they were turning a corner. It was hard to know what to fully believe. They had just beaten the Rams a few weeks previously in Seattle as well. But now that we saw what happened today, the Seahawks team that we saw in the first half of the season is long gone. And I think they need to really consider philosophical changes offensively. There's just something amiss there. And they're not efficient. Russell Wilson used to be, a guy that would, finish games, 16 for 19. Anything that he threw was pretty much going to be caught by like Tyler Lockett, for example, with their great chemistry. But I know every game's not going to be clean, but I mean, today, at one point he was like 8 for 22 with like 125 yards passing, just really bad stuff. But a real gutsy effort by the Rams. Very much so. So John Wolford gets hurt early. He made a couple good plays, but Jamal Adams on a questionable hit. It was kind of a shoulder to the head hit, which was originally a flag, and they picked it up, but it definitely should have been a penalty. I could see, I guess, both sides, but didn't look clean when you watched it. So now Jared Goff has to come into the game. He was active, which ended up being a good thing for the Rams because they needed him, but clearly he wasn't right. His thumb, they were going to go with Wolford. I think Goff was a bit of a decoy, but if they absolutely needed to go to him, they would have. And that's exactly what happened. And he made enough plays. Throws were wobbly. I think, honestly, if they had played a better team, I don't know if they would have hung on, but they were able to run the ball very well. Cam Akers had a really good game. and he was the workhorse. It looks like they found someone in this rookie. And Aaron Donald, who eventually got hurt, but when he was in there, was in Russell Wilson's face all day long. That Seahawks offensive line was not good. And Russell Wilson threw a really big pick six where the cornerback literally, he read it very easily. And it was one of those plays where it was, kind of a lateral pass from, Wilson immediately throws, I guess you call it kind of a screen play to a receiver, looks Metcalf's way, and the cornerback just jumps it. Easy pick six to give the Rams a 17-7 lead. The Seahawks would fight back. Metcalf would spring loose for a long touchdown. He had a pretty big day after he was initially contained by Jalen Ramsey. But really not impressed with Seattle more than anything here. But again, the Rams did a good job. And just bringing it back to the Giants, the fact that they beat Seattle, yeah, kind of makes sense now. I'm sorry, but I got to be hard on them here, where it was a good win. It was with Colt McCoy, but there's a reason why it happened. There's a reason. This is the Seahawks team. It's kind of overrated. Or maybe not. Maybe people kind of understand that they're just not all that amazing. Because on paper, it's like Russell Wilson, obviously Pete Carroll, Super Bowl winning coach. The core of this team is kind of still intact. Obviously, like, the Legion of Boom is long gone, but, you still have, like, the Bobby Wagners of the world, and, Jamal Adams you bring in, and he definitely is not great in the pass game, but, he can wreak havoc, near the line of scrimmage. So they have some individual talent, but I don't know. I don't love what's going on there at all. So in this divisional rivalry, the Rams win. And it's a great job by Sean McVay. And the Rams were in pretty good control of this game. They really were. It was close for a good portion. And in the beginning, it was a very defensive game. And then there was just some big plays. But the thing is with the Rams, they were able to kind of control the clock, make plays when they needed to. With the Seahawks, they just seem so dependent on the big play. Very much so. So with that result, that really kind of changed the balance of the NFC playoff picture. So before we get into the Bucs-Washington game, which that's a 4-5 game, so that would not affect any of the reseed going on here. So the thought was, I thought that Seattle, I figured it'd be close. I thought Seattle would win. And if that were to have happened, what you would have likely seen next round would be Green Bay hosting Tampa and New Orleans hosting Seattle. Now that the Rams won, this is assuming that the Saints beat the Bears. So we still have to see that. Who knows what can happen. But this is assuming New Orleans takes care of business. Now you're going to have the Rams going to Lambeau to face the Packers. And now, an NFC South clash in New Orleans between the Saints and the Bucs. And in those matchups, the Saints dominated Tampa this year. So, whereas Tampa, we'll see if the revenge narrative works itself out here, but just based on the regular season, Tampa creamed Green Bay, and on the flip side, Tampa got crushed by New Orleans. So I think if you're a Bucs fan, you're probably not thrilled with that Ram-Seahawk result. However, Brady in a situation where he's kind of not being counted out, but where he really got embarrassed, you just have to wonder what could happen. So let's talk about the Bucs versus Washington. Bucs were able to get the win, and Brady played very well. He really did. I thought the Tampa offense did what they had to. They got off to a pretty good start. They were able to kind of spread it around. Ronald Jones he didn't play. He all of a sudden had a quad injury. I guess it happened in pregame. So Leonard Fournette did a good job in his place. And Mike Evans was able to tough it out and had a really good game. Really good game. I have a lot of respect for him. It looked like he had a really bad knee injury, but crisis averted, and he made some really big plays. And Brady just did what he does. That's just what it is. And Chase Young wasn't really too involved for how good he is. The rest of the line got in there eventually, but it took Washington too much time to really get going. It was a little bit too late. But Washington, that team scrapped all year long. I obviously paid very close attention to them all season, and to the very end, they fought and scratched and clawed. It was just came up too short. Taylor Heineke, does Washington have a quarterback now? You got to give this kid a look next season. Maybe, you never know. This could have just been like a one-game fluke, but he looked really, really good. And Alex Smith not playing, like I said, Alex Smith, just in general, coming off the injury, I think that whole storyline with him, it's a great one. I don't think he's that good. Now you add on this calf injury, Heineke gave them such a better chance to win. If Smith played, they had no shot. But Heineke was moving around, avoiding sacks, making really good throws. But they were just behind the whole game. Now, Tampa just kind of had them. They were in control for the most part. But this was a game in the fourth quarter. This was close. Tampa ends up winning by 8. And the defense had to eventually make some stops and some plays, which they did. I don't think that the Tampa was ever really nervous they were going to lose it. But they certainly were within that realm. And the Bucs also showed some cracks. I think that they can stop the run with the best of them, but that passing defense, it can be attacked. It really can be. So I think Brady can maybe mask some issues if it's playoff Brady. That defense, though, I'm just not too sure. I have not been blown away with them the last couple weeks. So, yeah, Washington, done. This is the first. It kind of makes sense that the NFC East is the first division fully eliminated. And the NFC situation is very clear now. Very clear. So, I don't want to get full on into previews, but for the NFC, I think I kind of can. Just Tampa, New Orleans in general is just really, really intriguing. Drew Brees versus Tom Brady. And I just can't get those two games out of my mind from this season. It was some of the biggest blowouts. The week 1 game, I guess I can give Tampa a pass. It was Brady's first game. A lot of uncertainty, like the first game with no fans. So, I can give them a pass on the week 1 game, which New Orleans beat them pretty handily. But then, midway through the season, Sunday Night Football in Tampa, that might have honestly been close to, if not the biggest blowout of the entire season in the NFL. That game was over in the first quarter. It was unbelievable. We'll see what happens, though, tomorrow in Chicago, New Orleans. I think Chicago can... We see in the playoffs that teams really give it everything they got. And that was very apparent today. So I think Chicago, they have some weapons on both sides of the ball. We have seen New Orleans showing the ability to choke. So, again, I'll give them the edge, but we shall see. And in the AFC, things will come into focus tomorrow, very much so. I cannot wait for Baltimore, Tennessee. That is definitely the most exciting game of the weekend. There's going to be so much offense. There's so many storylines. This is a playoff rematch. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. And then to finish it off, a really old school rivalry in Cleveland versus Pittsburgh. And a team in Cleveland that, we have not seen this team in the playoffs in almost 20 years. And Pittsburgh usually has their number. So a lot to be determined on the AFC side of things. We'll definitely recap all of that tomorrow. I can't wait. Another 3 games on the slate. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend.